Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Sword. We have a great show. We are going to talk about some Braves free agency, some huge rumors, and also Ronaldo Lopez, the Braves signed him. We talked about it yesterday, but now there's some reports that he could be a starting pitcher. We're going to talk about some of the best rivalries coming up on this college football rivalry weekend. We're going to break down the Falcons and Saints, but we are going to start this conversation off with a question that a conversation that we briefly talked about yesterday, but got cut short because we got the breaking news from Ronaldo Lopez. And it is the Heisman conversation, and it has become a hot topic because you do have three guys that are performing at an exceptionally high level, and it's really a three-man race. Like, I know people are talking – some people still have Marvin Harrison in this conversation. The guy has 1,000 receiving yards. Like, listen, I'm sorry. Like, Jamar Chase didn't even make it to New York, and he had 1,700 receiving yards. Like, for you to win a Heisman as a wide receiver, to even be invited, you have to put up some historic numbers. And I get the McCord thing, and if you want to give him the Blitnikoff because you think he's the best receiver, that's just fine. But stop the Heisman conversation around Marvin Harrison, because he doesn't belong in this conversation. But you do have three guys. Michael Penix, great performance against Oregon State. It was rainy. He had 3 touchdowns. He went on the road, got his team a win. Washington's 11-0. You got Bo Nix. He's now, I think, at 40 touchdowns or 38 touchdowns, something like that. Only has 2 turnovers. Really efficient Oregon offense. He's been playing fantastic. Had 6 touchdowns against Arizona State. And then you have Jayden Daniels, who seems to put up video game numbers every week. And I know it was Georgia State, but he had 8 touchdowns and 8 possessions and over 500 yards of offense before he was pulled from the game. And LSU definitely kind of made it put some emphasis on, hey, Jayden, go out there and do this. But they didn't put too much emphasis because he had a chance to break the LSU record for most touchdowns in a game set by Joe Burrow against Oklahoma. And they didn't send him out for another drive because they easily could have sent him out one more drive. And guess what would have happened? He would have scored another touchdown because nobody was stopping this man. Nobody can stop this man. And I think we are at the point that I know there's going to be recency bias because Jayden Daniels isn't going to play in the SEC championship while Penix and Nix most likely will. But at the end of the day, if he goes out there and does his thing, gets 4 more touchdowns, has 50 touchdowns on the season, 4,000 passing yards, 5,000 rushing yards, I just don't see – I don't think it matters what happens in the Pac-12 championship. It doesn't matter. Unless someone goes out there of Nix or Penix and goes out there and throws for 6 TDs and leads this crazy win, which is possible, they're going to have to do something insane to take this award away from Jayden Daniels.
I still don't even think that warrants taking it away from Jayden Daniels. I mean, the 3 losses is what people are really hanging their hats on. Those people out west in Eugene and in Washington, they're saying, Jayden Daniels hasn't won a big game. Jayden Daniels has 3 losses. And I get it. You can't watch every game as a college football fan. I watch a lot of them, if not most of them. I've watched every Oregon game. I've watched most every Washington game, and I've watched every LSU game. And Bo Nix does not play at the level that Jayden Daniels does. And that's a fact. I mean, Michael Penix certainly does in terms of his down the field passing, but Bo Nix's offense, and it's no slight to Bo Nix because he's still a very good quarterback, but he's throwing at or just beyond the line of scrimmage 80% of the time. I just pulled that number out of thin air, but I promise it is way higher than Jayden Daniels, who has one of the prettiest, sexiest deep balls I have ever seen in college football. I mean, his deep ball accuracy is that of like a Sunday, a good Sunday quarterback. I promise that will translate to the NFL. And even on top of that, these guys have no business being in the same conversation in terms of explosiveness. Jayden Daniels has more explosive plays, which is more than 20-plus yards by his feet and arm, than any other school in the nation. Any other school. That's crazy. One player. This guy is so dynamic with his feet and his arm. He is in the conversation with Cam Newton, Tim Tebow, Lamar Jackson, Robert Griffin III. Every Heisman winner that you can think of that's up there is dual threat guys. Jayden Daniels is right there. He's the first player in NCAA history to record 350 passing yards and 200 rushing yards. Oh, we could talk about Georgia State. That was against Florida. And Florida's a bad football team, but it was still Florida. It was still an SEC school. So I don't want to hear any of this crap about, Jayden Daniels hasn't beaten good teams. He beat a Missouri team. That's better than anything Bo Nix has done. He lost to his first real test was Washington, and they lost. So I don't understand all of this team stats being held against Jayden Daniels. It's nonsense when we look at total yards. If we're looking at just passing yards, it's a really tight race, and Jayden Daniels is going to get edged out because of those losses. But we are talking about a guy who's LSU's entire offense, Bo Nix and Oregon's running back don't have more combined yards than Jayden Daniels does. That's how special this guy is in Baton Rouge. It'll be a disgrace if he doesn't win the Heisman Trophy. And it's crazy you got guys like Robert Griffin III, who won the Heisman with 3 losses, taking those losses and putting them against Jayden Daniels. It's completely unfair. It feels like nobody watched the Alabama, Ole Miss, or Florida State game. Florida State game was his worst game by far. But if you watch that game, that LSU offense versus the one these past few weeks and ever since then, it's completely different LSU offense. That was an Oregon-looking offense where LSU was throwing it at the line of scrimmage or just beyond the line of scrimmage. And then they were like, all right, we got to open it up. We got 2 horses and Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, and we're going to throw it downfield. And Jayden Daniels just went nutty. It's absolutely mind-boggling that you can watch that Ole Miss game and place that loss on him, or the Alabama loss on him. This defense is one of the worst defenses I've ever seen in my entire life, and Oregon's got a national championship caliber defense, and we're holding that against Jayden Daniels.
Well, yeah, and Oregon also doesn't play anybody. That's the other thing. There were these questions about and people will be like, oh, the Pac-12 is good. And listen, you can make the argument that the Pac-12 is the best that it's ever been, and it might be up there as close to the SEC as it's been in a very, very long time. And I would agree with you. The facts are they don't play defense in the Pac-12. They play about 1 good defense all year, and Bo Nix hasn't even played him yet. He plays him next week against Oregon State, so let's see what he does there. Maybe he does throw for 4 touchdowns, but I still don't think Oregon State has this amazing defense. It's nothing like Alabama's. It's not even in the same. It's nothing like Florida State's, who they played in the first week of the season. And you look at the Ole Miss game, he has 5 touchdowns. You look at the Alabama game, he had 4 touchdowns in 3 quarters. He probably gets a 5th. Like, we're talking about a guy who is literally unstoppable offensively, and the defense has let him down. But yeah, if he doesn't win, it's borderline should be a crime. It should be held against all the voters that voted against him, and they should be looked into, because straight up facts, the guy's having a historic season that we've never seen before. He's going to have he could end up with 4,000 passing yards and 1,000 rushing yards in the best defensive conference, I think, still. Even I don't care what people say about the Big Ten. They just can't play offense. And the best defensive conference still in the country. And it's just like, you look at his passing efficiency. It's better than Joe Burrow's. It's better than Joe Burrow's. Like, this LSU offense is as good, if not better, than 2019. And you're going to hold that against the guy? Like, it's just, I think the voters will end up getting it right. I think you're starting to see the country come around to the fact that this guy is clearly better than everybody else. Yeah. But I until I see him with the trophy in his hand, I will not be able to breathe about this, because it will be a straight up robbery.
Highway robbery, Declaration of Independence, stolen valor, whatever you want to say. I mean, it would be an unmitigated disaster to not give Jayden Daniels this Heisman. And I think that you nailed it right there. Everywhere in the country, everybody in the country, except for the Pacific Northwest, that is the only part of the country who doesn't think Jayden Daniels is the best player in college football. That's the only place. And I think the Heisman voters are going to get it right. I really do think it's his.
Yeah, I hope so, because I got a future on it. I hope so, because I got a future on it. So come on, give it to Jayden. He deserves it. Coming up after the break, huge rumor, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the Braves are in on him.